So we now have our entire exterior of the bag assembled and put together, and we have our entire lining assembled and put together, and we get to put these two things together into our final bag. So we're going to turn the exterior of the bag so it is right side out, just as it will be in the final bag. And then our lining is going to be just as it will also be in the final bag, with the correct side of the fabric on the inside. Now, if you are doing the divider pocket, we do need to pay attention to our orientation at this point. So if you're using the divider pocket in here, I at least prefer to have my zipper close to the left when I'm looking at the front of the bag. So as long as you want that orientation as well, I'm going to be holding this so that means this is the front part of the bag because the zipper is closing to the left. Now I'm actually going to be taking the exterior of the bag and putting it inside the lining so that our fabrics are right side together and we can sew the entire top part of the bag together. So you will have to kind of scrunch up your bag. Now again, this is the front of my bag. This is going to be the front of the lining, so I need to make sure that those edges are put together. If you are using the divider pocket, your exterior, like the bulk of your exterior, will kind of all be smushed in one side of the divider pocket. It doesn't matter which side of that divider pocket it's kind of smushed into, because this is just temporary while we're clipping everything together. But just realize that it's obviously going to have to be smushed on one side or the other. If you're not using the divider pocket, you'll have plenty of space in there. So I'm going to start by clipping together the top center points of the main panels of the exterior and lining. So I did that side, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for this other side. You just kind of have to shift the fabric around as you're doing this. After we have these center points clipped together, we're going to go to our tops sides parts here. So looking at these top parts of the gusset, I'm gonna kind of pull it so that it lays flat. It can also be helpful. Earlier we marked the top center point of our gusset end piece, and in this case I have a seam on the end of this gusset. You could also have marked it, but since I have the divider pocket, I have a middle point marked. You don't necessarily need to have that middle point, but it can be helpful. Then we're gonna match up these corners. And you see that our seam allowances should match up here. We are going to orient this so that the seam for the lining goes in towards the middle of the gusset and the seam allowance for the exterior goes out. So we're nesting, these seams, and we're going to clip that. And same with the other side. So lining is coming in, exterior is going out. Just like that, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Once we have those initial edges clipped together at our midpoints and these top corners, we're going to go ahead and continue clipping around the bag, making sure that we line up the curves along the top edges really nicely. So I kind of just pull it so they get taut, and then that should allow you to clip together really nicely. And we're just going to continue clipping all the way around the rest of these top edges of the bag. I have that entire top edge clipped together now, and I'm going to go ahead and take this to my sewing machine and sew around this entire edge at 3/8 inch seam allowance. Take your time as you go around the curved portions. Whenever you get to a corner, make sure you put down your needle, pivot, and then continue sewing so you can get a nice sharp corner at those points. And use a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Try to keep that really consistent as you go all the way around the top of the bag. So I now have that whole top edge of the bag sewn, and I'm gonna go ahead and just trim down part of this seam allowance. There's a couple places you want to focus on. These top corners can have a lot of bulk, and we want to be able to get those turned really nice and cleanly, so I like to trim those down really well. So right at those top corners, make sure you don't cut into your stitching at all. And then we're also going to trim along our curved top edges. You can trim this with regular scissors, and then you could also cut some little notches in it, or you could just use pinking shears to trim that down and reduce the bulk in that curve. So I did go ahead and use some pinking shears on that edge, and I made sure I trim up these corners, and then I'm going to turn the whole bag right side out through the hole we left in the lining earlier. Keep in mind that as you are turning this right side out, if you have a divider pocket, it's going to look kind of weird, and so you get that pushed down into the lining. You also want to make sure that you push out from the inside those top corners. So it can be very helpful to use some kind of a turning tool. I usually just use this chopstick. I'm gonna really get those corners nice and clean. There we go. You also can feel on the inside. I'm feeling on the inside with my hand, and I'm making sure that, again, my seam allowance of the lining is laying going this way and the exterior is going the other way. That way we don't have bulk anywhere. And as I am pushing these corners out and making sure everything is laying correctly, you can also go ahead and start clipping these edges, especially at these corners, just again to make sure everything is laying properly. Grab a couple clips here, make sure that these corners and the top edge of this gusset piece is going to lay nicely. And then I can go ahead and do the other side as well. Same thing, making sure to really push out those corners and make sure that the seams are laying in the right direction. Once those top gusset parts are nice and neat, you push the rest of your lining down inside the bag. Make sure all of our exterior edges look good. Oh, sorry. There we go. Great. And now I'm going to continue clipping along my top edges. I roll the seams in my fingers so that I can make sure that the exterior is on the outside, lining is on the inside, and that we have a nice, neat seam here. So we're going to clip all the way around this top edge so that we can go ahead and top stitch in just a moment. So I have clipped that whole top edge of the bag, and I'm going to go ahead and take this to my sewing machine and top stitch along this entire top part of the bag. All right, next we do need to close up the opening. So I'm going to pull up the lining where that hole was left and kind of pull it so that we have a straight edge here. I kind of usually like push up on the inside of the seam just past where the opening is so you can see where your seam should sit, and then pinch it together, and we're going to clip. So the raw edge should be inside the bag, and we're just having these folds on the outside, and we're going to clip it along that all the way. Okay, once that is clipped, I'm going to go ahead and take this to my sewing machine. I'm going to top stitch along this edge 1/8 inch seam allowance to close up that opening. So the bag is assembled, exterior and lining are together. Now we just need to do our O-ring connectors need to be finished off, and we need to create our shoulder strap.